How do, folks? Welcome to this video that I've been promising to make for a little while, the AMA Ask Me Anything. I was excited and dreading what you might send through, and there have been some inspired questions and some clangers, but that's just my opinion. I'm going to disguise everybody's names, so they're all going to be from Steve and Amanda. Don't know why I chose those two names, but that's where they're coming from. You will have sent yours in. If you recognise them, good on you. Thank you for sending them. And if you haven't sent any, join in the comment section afterwards. Let's hear your reflections. Let's hear your thoughts. What struck you, what hasn't. And yeah, we're going to kick off by what's behind me. We're going to kick off by addressing those bottles of beer. Amanda's been in touch again and would like to know the history and the story behind the bottle collection above my bookcases. So we'll just move quickly above my Easter egg collection, and I'm guessing you might be referring to this little lot. Yes, I'm guessing that's what you're referring to. Anyway, what's the story? When I first came to this part of the world, I came home from church one day and happened upon my local pub, which is almost literally in my back garden. So I thought I'd better go in and say hello, and I did, and they made me very welcome. And cut a long story short, I was so welcome, and I was there often enough that for my birthday one year, they gave me this tankard. Now, if I can get the light right, and if I turn it round further enough, you might be able to make out, it says on here somewhere, Rev Pub Church. For a while, in the particular pub, I ran, not a church, but a discussion group. I ran a group, and we chatted throughout all sorts of things. We talked about, what was going on in current affairs, what was going on in the news, things, issues that we brought with us. We had a bit of banter, we had a laugh, and there were half a dozen of us who met together for maybe 18 months or so. Anyway, people's lives move on in different directions, and mine did too. I adopted. And the thing about kids is you suddenly find you've got no time of your own. And so my time at the pub pretty much came to a halt. And that was almost 5 years ago. But these beer bottles were when I had a reputation for enjoying occasional sup now and again. So although there's a lot of them, they were built up over probably 6 years. And this handful here are the only ones left with lids on. So I'm getting low, but no problems. So that's the story. It was a group that we had at the local pub where we explored life together, and happy memories and some significant conversations, but a chapter now that has closed. Well, for now. Steve's been doing a bit of carpentry recently, and he asks, was Jesus a good carpenter? Well, we don't really know, do we, Steve? So maybe Joseph taught him all he knew and he set out to set up his own business. Maybe business didn't really work like that in those days. Maybe he wasn't very good at it at all and Joseph despaired of him, fired him even. We'll never know. Steve also asks, did Jesus always make the perfect cut? Well, maybe for Jesus the challenge was to make it a bit wonky from time to time so that he could blend in. But I do like that you talk to him when you do carpentry. I hope you do it at other times too. Amanda writes, so I've been reading some weird things in my feed on my phone, as you know, and a new one came up yesterday about tapping into the superconscious mind. Is that what we would call the Holy Spirit? I don't know is the honest answer, but you might have to you might have to talk to the person that sent it to you what they meant by superconscious mind. But superconscious mind sounds like some cosmic, universal, everywhere kind of thing. It sounds a bit impersonal. It sounds a bit at a distance. It sounds a bit, well, not very interesting. The Holy Spirit we understand with words like comforter, guide, counsellor. Much more personal, much more intimate. And if I was given a choice, I think I'd go with Holy Spirit. I think I'd want to get to know Holy Spirit much sooner than I want to get to know superconscious mind. Superconscious mind's a bit intimidating. It's like that clever clogs in class that always made you feel a bit small. I don't think God's in the business of making us feel small. I think God's in the business of lifting us up and picking us up. So for me, I'm going to go with Holy Spirit. Don't know if you can make this out. What does it say? Spilled on this earth are all the joys of heaven. Well, controversial. Anyway, Steve's been in touch again, and his question is, if the dead will rise from the grave, does it make any difference if one is cremated rather than buried? Do you know what, Steve? I think if the dead are going to rise from the grave, if that's possible, I think the form your body was in before it came back to life is the least of the worries about how this would happen practically. Maybe it's a maybe it's going to happen literally. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's it's imagery for that sense of new life, for that renewal. I don't know. None of us know. But what form we're in beforehand, I think, is secondary to the fact of there is going to be new life. The dead will rise, and that to me is hopeful, that the end is never the end, that what happened at Easter and that what comes through Pentecost is the chance of new life in God, a new chance. That to me is amazing. So I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to leave the details to, well, God. God's going to do it. Let's make it God's problem. Hi, welcome to my compost. I'm going to have to take the bubble wrap off that one. I don't think it needs protecting now over the winter. And here's a pile of, yes, that's right, it's good for the roses. The question from Amanda: do I think God sent the pandemic to remind people that the world and all its inhabitants belong to him? Short answer, certainly not. No. And I'll tell you why. Because I don't think that God is in the business of killing us off. I don't think God is in the business of death. I think God is in the business of life. Now, if through the pandemic we've had the opportunity to reevaluate life, if we've had the chance to look and actually see the beauty around us and reappreciate the important people in our lives and readjust our values, then that's something to thank God for. But did God send a pandemic to kill? No, definitely not. That's not God's way. Good old Amanda, she's got quite a few questions, hasn't she? She's written a few more. She's put, I'm struggling. As an emotional and tactile person, following conversations with family and friends, all I want to do is see them, be with them, and give them a big hug. I miss this. Short question, how do you sustain your faith during these unprecedented and challenging times? Well, yeah, I'm with you, Amanda. Hugs, contact, being with family and friends are so important, and not being able to it hurts. Yeah, it hurts. It really hurts. How do I sustain my faith? Well, I've never had so many phone calls with people. I've just had my phone bill for April, and when I totted up all the minutes, it would appear that over April I've spent an entire day on the phone if you add all the minutes up. To be honest, it felt like I've spent longer than that. But the number of phone calls, the number of emails, the number of texts, the number of video conferences, I've been more in touch, it feels to me at least, with friends and family and colleagues than during lockdown than I ever have before. I've seen people weep and laugh. They've shared things about their lives that they would never have shared with me face to face, and I know that because I've spent time with them over the last 8 years and they didn't. So it feels as though I'm in some senses closer, even though we can't touch. And the faith thing, well, it's a bit like that with God, isn't it? I mean, I made that video the other day about cloud in a bottle, that we can't touch God in the same way that the disciples could do 2,000 years ago. We can't see him leaving footprints on a beach. We can't sit and have a fish and chip supper with him. But we still know God's presence. We feel God intimately close to us. And I have felt and known God through you, through the conversations that I've had, in the same way that I did before lockdown. Conversations, time spent, hearts opened, minds stretched. That's how my faith is sustained, and it hasn't changed in that sense. The vehicle has changed, it's much more digital if you like, but it's still the same way of sustaining faith. Prayer and worship, and through God's people. Now, what else did you put? How do you deal with not physically seeing members of your congregation? Oh, the temptation is strong with this one. I've missed them very much. Actually, I have. And it's always a joy when we do speak or see one another on video conferencing. And the emails, the phone calls have been a real blessing. The number of cards that I've received. So, yes, I haven't seen very many in person, physically. But I haven't felt separated from you. And that, I think, is a good thing. Steve's asked the question, I look around and do believe we will get through this and just maybe live in a better world. Is that God's plan? Is this the world's wake-up call? Well, Steve, if I knew what God's plan was, I would be in a different place entirely. I have no idea what God's plan is, and I'm not going to pretend to. I hope it's a wake-up call for all of us. I hope we are going to come through this, and I hope we are going to make the right choices to make this a better place going forward. But I was hoping that before coronavirus. So, yeah, I'm going to do my bit to try and make this world a better place. Sometimes I'm going to make a good fist of that, and sometimes I'm going to really mess up. And I invite you to do your part. Together we can change our worlds, and all together we can change the world. So let's crack on, let's do that, let's make the right choices, and let's make a better world. After all, I think that is God's plan. Maybe. Steve's been in touch again, and he's looking for some more certainties, I think. If there were additional commandments for the modern world, what would some of the rules be? Ooh, I tell you what, comments please. What would you make as new rules? If you had the chance to do the commandments all over again, what would you add? Let's hear them. I mean, be kind. Speak the truth. That's a couple. They're not exactly rocket science, but we do seem to be struggling with them, me included from time to time. The less sleep I have, the harder it becomes. So, yeah, what would your rules be for a new world? Let's hear them. Put them in the comments. Okay, 3 interrelated questions to finish on. What have you learned most about yourself during this time of lockdown that has surprised you? What would you like the new normal, what's that phrase, to look like when we come out of lockdown? And what do you say to those amongst us who are dreading the announcement that lockdown is finished and that they can return to the busyness and activity of their pre-lockdown life? Oh, wow. What do you say to those amongst us who are dreading the announcement that lockdown is finished and that they can return to the busyness and activity of their pre-lockdown life? What might the new normal look like? And what have you learned most? I'll tell you what, those three, add those to the comments section as well, please. I'll put them in the description below. What have you learned most about yourself? What would you like the new future to look like if it was up to you? And what do you say to those who are dreading the end of lockdown? For me, I think glibly I'm going to sum it up with, it doesn't have to be this way. Before lockdown, I couldn't see life being any different to the way it was. Lockdown has given me the opportunity to see that it doesn't have to be that way. There's been hard stuff and stressful stuff and frustrating stuff, but there's also been good things and the opportunity. It doesn't have to be that way. I think we're all still in the middle of it. We can't answer what the new normal is going to be, but there has been some stuff that has been good that I want to cherish, and I want to hang on to as and when we come out the other side. So what's it been? And let me give you an example. A friend of mine was minister of a church up in the northwest, and the church was told that it was being compulsory purchase to make way for a tram line. Now, normally when churches need to build a new building, they go through all sorts of heartache and turn themselves inside out as they argue amongst themselves about whether they are going to get rid of the old building or not. But this church, that decision was made for them. Your building is going. It is being flattened. The only question you have is where and what do you want the new church to look like? And that was really hard for them just to fathom their way through that on its own. But what my friend did that I think that was key, that helped them so much, is he took various architects' drawings of possibilities and created them, literally cut them out of cardboard, coloured them in, and built these models of different church layouts. So they could literally take the roof off and look inside and go, okay, so that's where the kitchen is, and over there's the hall, and the toilets are here. Well, what if the kitchen and the toilet swap places, or what if we put the hatch round there? They could see their potential new future building. They could visualize it, and it made it so much easier for them to move forwards. It didn't mean that it was a walk in the park. It was still hard work, but they could conceptualize a future. And pre-coronavirus, we couldn't conceptualize any future other than the one we were in. It was really difficult. And coronavirus has enabled us to lift the lid off our lives and re-examine what's important and the order of things and the relationship between different things. Now, we still haven't moved to that new future. I think it's still on the drawing board. But it doesn't have to be this way. And I think there's also something in there too about the Christian faith. That the Christian faith challenges us, invites us to imagine a different future. Whatever's gone on in your life, wherever your life's journey has taken you, the story of the Christian faith offers you the possibility of a new future, a different future, a future of love and care and concern and nurture by the one who will always love you and me unconditionally. And if I can grasp what that means, if I can see how deep that is, how wide that is, how broad that is, then I will start to inhabit that new future. And I will truly understand what it means to say, it doesn't have to be this way. Stay safe. Live love. I don't know if this is going to come out on camera, but you see where this dappled sunlight is? That's a track through my long grass that's about a foot wide and it's been completely flattened. That's not a pussycat, that's Mr. Badger. He's been about. 3 interrelated questions to finish on. Oh, excuse me. And no, I've had that. No, it's not one of those. No, it's fine.